What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. It is Coastal Fitness TV episode 2, and I hope that you enjoyed episode 1. If you haven't watched it already, go back and check it out. You're here for episode 2. So highlights of what we're going to talk about today is challenge, how to challenge oneself to improve a little bit more or push the envelope a little bit more so you can strive and make change towards your goal that you're working on right now. The exercise of the week this week is going to be your rear foot elevated split squat. I'm going to go through that a little bit more in detail. And then to wrap out the show, we're going to talk about how to get your protein number and what that number is. So that's what's coming up in this show. We hope that you stick around and enjoy. We get this question asked to coaches quite frequently of how do I either break out of a plateau or how do I make something a little bit harder, more challenging so that I can continue to reach or strive towards my goal. And even sometimes we don't get that direct question, but what we start seeing is people get either complacent or they, not to sound mean, but they can sandbag a little bit in their training, or they're just not pushing when there's some extra energy or there's some extra resources that they have that they could be pushing a little bit more to work towards that goal. So I'm going to break down a few different ways that you can do that through your exercise, your nutrition, and we're going to talk about sleep a little bit as well, so that you don't get caught in the trap of just complacency and not really striving towards your goal. So when we start to see somebody that is either looking like they're really controlling, they are mastering their training program or their exercises, and we feel like we can push the envelope a little bit. They've created enough capacity that we can throw more stimuli at them, and they're gonna be able to handle it and not break down in any way. So when it comes to a training program, we're typically looking at, can you lift a little bit heavier? That's the first place that we start. Provided quality of movement stays the same, can you lift a little bit more? Another way is, are you able to increase the number of sets that you're doing in your training program? And this is very specific to the type of program that you're doing, but are you able to get through an extra block of groupings of exercises and add that by one set? Another way that you can increase overall intensity is by trying to move something a little bit faster. You still have to maintain the control and the overall technique, but moving with the intent to move it faster also does wonderful things for your physiology and also can provide some extra strength gains or lean mass gains as well. The last one I'll mention relating to exercise is, are you able to get into the gym one extra day a week or add in some extra activity either outside or somewhere else, whether that be active recovery or going for a walk outside or actually getting another gym session in. All of those reasons or all of those ideas are ways that you can push the envelope when you're feeling like you're just sort of treading water. When it comes to your nutrition habits, however, sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult to decipher whether or not it's appropriate to make things a little bit harder or if you're ready for a new challenge. Oftentimes how we as coaches, especially with our nutrition clients, we look at it, we need to see some data. We need to see that you've been tracking things consistently and that you have actually owned your current nutrition habit that you're focusing on. And that can be something as simple as literally recording what you're eating for 2 weeks. If you've proven that, we want to then take that initial habit of recording and then look at it through another lens of, okay, are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough good fats? Are you getting enough veg throughout the week and throughout the day? And so we can start to look at different ways that we're either going to make it a little bit more challenging or completely change it and take you to a new way of, this is a higher challenge, a higher threshold habit, and we want to make sure that you're hitting some check marks before you get to that point. In the example of recording your meals, once you've done that for a certain period of time, that has become more ingrained in your day-to-day. What we'll then look at, for example, is, are you getting your 8 to 9 servings of vegetables throughout the day? If not, okay, what do we need to do in order to get there? And then from there, what is it going to take to get you to that number? And then once you're there, how can we start to play with either new recipes or new vegetables or new food groups that you haven't, or not new foods in general that you haven't played with yet, to then try and bring into the repertoire. Because if you're just using the same 5 or 6 ingredients in all of your veg platters, you're missing out on extra variety and extra other good nutrient foods as well. So that's another way that we look at the nutrition and trying to push the envelope a little bit with that. The main things that we're concerned about when it comes to sleep is quality and quantity. And we want to look at whether it is your duration of sleep that is the problem or the quality of that sleep that is the issue. So we want to look at, oftentimes it's typically the 3 to 5 hours before bedtime that actually impact your sleep. We want to look at that time frame and see what your down regulation or your wind down period, what that looks like. And oftentimes we try and encourage people to start going to bed a little bit earlier so that you can wake up at the exact same time every day, regardless of weekday or weekend. And so that's just going to try and maintain a certain level of duration and consistency throughout the week, which is oftentimes where people are really struggling. They just need that consistency so that their sleep habits actually stay and they're not super fluctuation, or they're not fluctuating wildly, so they lose out on massive amounts of sleep. One way that we start to bring in new habits is we look at screen time. That's probably now, with just the way that the world is and TV, phones, and all that sort of stuff, is we want to look at screen time and see how much either you're getting in an evening or how soon to bedtime you're watching or looking at your phone. So that's one place that we'll start. Another place is trying to increase or do a new thing right before bed, whether that's stretch or foam roll, or read a physical book, or draw or journal, doing something that is away from a screen but requires some thought involved, so that you're able to then park your thoughts, you're able to get your thoughts out of your head, and it just helps with the sleep wind down period. So those are a few different ways that you can push the envelope or try and increase a little bit of extra progress if you're finding that you're just sort of treading water or you're not really making a ton of progress, or on the other side, you have mastered what you are currently working on and are looking for a new challenge. Those are some ways that you can bring those in and try them out, and that's the best part. You can typically get some really quick feedback. If you're recording stuff, you can get a good idea of what's actually changing in a pretty short order, and see how it's actually working for you. And if not, then you can try another thing. But the key thing is that you're recording and you're actually tracking what's happening and what's changing. That's all for the main part of the show. Now let's get into the exercise and the tip of the week. The exercise of the week this week is the rear foot elevated split squat. This is a phenomenal lower body exercise that is focusing primarily on the front leg for taking the brunt of the load, but you're still getting some activation in that lower or the rear leg, because you still have to control the descent into the actual lunge component. The benefit to something like this is it works a ton of hip stability, but also leg strength, as well as just upper body positioning. Depending on your focus with this, you can lean a little bit further forward to get a more glute focus, or as I am here, you can get more of an upper body or like a upright posture position to focus more so on the leg component. We use this oftentimes as a substitute for squats that are typically done in a bilateral or with two legs. The single leg work does wonders for each leg. Like, it just does magical things. It's a great way to develop strength, but also work on that hypertrophy, work on that muscle size, and overall it's just a phenomenal lower body exercise. The tip of the week this week is to get your protein number. How do you know what the heck your protein number is? I'm going to tell you. It is roughly around that 1 gram per pound of body weight. And that's basically your starting point. That's where you want to at least hit. If you are more active throughout your day, so if you're the stereotypical construction worker that is working in manual labor, or you're moving quite a bit, you'll likely want to get somewhere in the 1.5, oh my word, 1.5. This is why I wasn't a teacher, folks. I can't write on a board worth it. Hot damn. Per pound of body weight. So if you're just getting started, you want to start getting around this mark. If you are in the game and you're training at least 3 times a week, or your daily job has you doing more manual labor, more physically active, you will likely need a little bit more. So it's really simple math. If you're 200 pounds, you need at least 200 grams of protein on a day-to-day basis. Or if you're more active, you need whatever 200 times 1.5 is, to 300 grams. And to be honest, it's not super difficult to get those, provided you know what you're actually eating. And if you're typically eating a good amount of whole, unprocessed foods, you'll be able to get there with a little bit of practice and just understanding of what foods have high protein in them. You might be surprised to know that they're in a ton of veggies as well. So whether you're completely eating plant-based, or if you are more on the animal protein side, it doesn't particularly matter. With a little bit more strategic planning around what you are eating, you can get to your number. Now, this is very generic. Depending on what your specific goal is, your height, weight, there are some variabilities. So you may actually be somewhere in the 1.2 mark. It could be very dependent on you, but this is a good general guideline to follow when you're first starting out, or just as a recheck to make sure that you're actually getting that number effectively every day, so that you are actually fueling your body's ability to then produce results, especially when you are physically active in a gym. You have to support the recovery and the growth of that muscle tissue. Otherwise, you're doing a bunch of work, but you're not maximizing the amount of plus side out of it. And one last thing, you don't necessarily need to use a protein supplement, but if you are finding you're lacking that bit of just that little bit of protein, you can easily use a shake or a protein supplement. I don't particularly care whether it's a whey or a plant-based. The 2 general rule of thumbs is, does it taste good, and does it treat your stomach nicely, meaning that you don't have a ton of gas or disaster pants after you have it. If it tastes good, you're going to use it, and if it doesn't mess with your stomach, you're going to use it. So it doesn't matter if you have the best protein and it doesn't work for you and you can't return it. Just make sure that it actually works for you.